Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith. I'll be conducting our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. It is a lovely, albeit slightly blustery day here at the Cape as we are awaiting the launch of the latest Falcon 9 rocket getting ready to lift off. This will be launch number 75 for Florida's Space Coast. Ball continues to track well over the next 59 minutes and some change. Rocket at the center of your screen, the Falcon 9 has 23 Starlink satellites on board, getting ready to send those Starlinks up to the 6th shell of the Starlink mega constellation. The mission name, Starlink 6-77. Supporting our coverage, as per usual, is our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, who is running the technical operations of the broadcast. We also have support this afternoon from our wonderful photographer, Adam Bernstein, who is out getting ready to track the rocket. Our friends Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions and Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images are also standing by, getting ready to help track this Falcon 9 rocket. We also have support in our live chat from our wonderful moderators. I see Callistia Lee, Astro Joe checking in this afternoon. We'll see if any of the other mods happen to stop by. If you do see them, be sure to give them a big old hello. We're also powered by a wonderful channel member community here on YouTube, so thanks to folks like Sulfur for Lunch, Rick Donner, Butterfly, Jeff Hansen, Well-Reasoned Superhawk, Patty Chichil, the Rocket Girl, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments here at the Cape in 4K. And while our other photographer, Michael Kane, may not be out here with us to shoot the rocket, he's always with us in spirit, and if you'd like to follow either him or Adam, you can find their work on X, formerly known as Twitter. Michael's at MD Kane Jr., Adam Bernstein at ABurnNYC. Be sure to give Spaceflight Now a follow simply at Spaceflight Now. If you yourself are not on X, you can also follow us on Facebook as well as Threads. As we're getting things rolling here this Sunday afternoon, I want to thank Rick Donner, one of our channel members, for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships, growing our community. Appreciate that, Rick. And to our newest channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Rick in the live chat. We hope you stick around with us with channel membership. As we are preparing for this Falcon 9 launch, we are also tracking the progress of another Falcon 9 rocket over at SpaceX's other Florida-based pad. You can see here, taking a live look now at pad 39A, Falcon 9 rocket standing by, ready to launch a whole host of cargo and science up to the International Space Station. At the top of the rocket right now, it's in a horizontal position, so on the far right where you see the cherry picker going up to it is a Cargo Dragon spacecraft, which will, tomorrow evening, while continues to move on track, be sending up thousands of pounds of science and supplies up to the astronauts aboard the International Space Station. Lots on board to keep them busy with science experiments and technology demonstrations, and of course, a fresh round of food and goodies never hurt, especially as we are just weeks away from the Thanksgiving holiday here in the United States. I'm sure the folks on the USO side of the ISS are much appreciated, or very much appreciate, I should say, having a fresh batch of food roll on in when it comes holiday season time. We are expecting this Falcon 9 rocket to go upright over the course of the next, potentially the next hour or so, if not a little bit later. As we track movement of this Falcon vehicle, we'll be sure to keep you apprised of that, bringing those live pictures as they happen. Taking a peek back at our live chat, want to thank the more than 1,300 of you who are joining with us live as we're getting things rolling today. If you haven't already, we'd certainly appreciate it if you could hit that like button for us. Allow some more folks to find their way into our live launch coverage this afternoon. I also want to thank one of our very generous channel members, Artemis, for gifting 50 Spaceflight Now memberships. That is very kind of you, Artemis. Always good to see you, and appreciate the ongoing generosity and growing our channel member community by that much. So to our newest 50 channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you all with us. Be sure to thank Artemis in the live chat if you haven't already. Just want to note Butterfly marking 10 months with us as a channel member at the pad leader level. This has another month of fun with Will and Space Cadets. It's always a fun time here at Spaceflight Now. Appreciate you, Butterfly, for sticking with us for the better part of a year. Also want to thank a few folks for using the Super Chat feature to offer some words of encouragement or just some support this afternoon. Thanks to Chuck Close, one of our channel members, for a $25 Super Chat. Really appreciate the support at that level, Chuck. Also want to thank my mother, Mary Robinson, joining us this afternoon from the Golden State, California. Saying hi, Florida. Love. California, Mom. Hey, Mom. I also want to welcome in and thank Wolverine Warlord, another one of our channel members, for a $5 Super Chat, who says, hello from Kennedy Space Center Atlantis North Viewing Lawn. First Falcon 9 launch live, visiting from Michigan. Woo! And welcome to you from Michigan. I have quite a bit of affinity for state of Michigan. I did a reporting internship over in East Lansing, Michigan for Channel 6 News, WLNS. And one of my sisters went to the University of Michigan, so lots of Michigan love from our family. Bringing things back here to the mission at hand, we're currently T-minus 52 minutes, 3 seconds and counting to the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. As the clock's still ticking, let's go ahead and talk about the countdown timeline, the milestones that we are anticipating as we continue to step through the count. Of course, all things start with the SpaceX launch director going ahead and giving the green light to begin fueling the Falcon 9 rocket. SpaceX does their poll electronically as opposed to running it through by a voice vote. So if they're feeling good, they can go ahead and take that poll a little bit early, but nominally it comes up at the T-minus 38-minute mark. About 3 minutes later, T-minus 35 minutes, is when propellant load itself begins. It starts with the two events you see there on your screen: loading of RP1, or rocket-grade kerosene, on board the first and second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. At the same time, liquid oxygen begins flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T-minus 30 minutes, they start loading cryogenic helium on board the Falcon 9's first stage on board the pressure vessels. Helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Same happens on the second stage about 4 or so minutes later. And at T-minus 23 minutes, the loading of second stage kerosene concludes. T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the Strongback chill down process begins. That's when they're thermally conditioning the feed lines prior to second stage LOX load. Before that happens, though, we see that chill down process manifest itself visually as the so-called big vent at about T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds. All that leads up to the start of second stage LOX load, which begins about T-minus 16 minutes. Moving right along, at the 7-minute mark before liftoff, The chill down of the 9 Merlin engines gets underway. That process involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, and it helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. In T-minus 4.5 minutes, the Strongback retract sequence begins. It starts with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector, the Strongback, will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It stays in that position until liftoff, at which point pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. About 3 minutes before launch, the first stage LOX tank is full. In a T-minus 2 minutes, second stage LOX loading wraps up. And at that point, the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. All of that wrapped up in the call-out we'll hear as the Falcon 9 is in startup, or something akin to that. T-minus 45 seconds is when the SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch. 3 seconds out is when the engine ignition command is issued. And if all 9 Merlins are healthy and ignite, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for a T0 liftoff. Coming up this lovely, sunny, probably cloudy afternoon at 4:57 p.m. Eastern, 21:57 UTC for our friends around the world. And to all of those in the United States, if you haven't already, be sure to make those clock adjustments. We've all fallen back an hour because daylight savings time is still a thing, though it perplexes many of us as to why. But here we are. Popping back over to the live chat for a moment. Want to thank Patty Chichil for a very generous $20 super chat. Really appreciate that, Patty, who says, "Hey everyone, love the live chat, great people. Thumbs up to the mods, hearts to the commentary, thank you. And welcome to the new members. You're going to absolutely love 100 this channel, Spaceflight Now and the mods, and everyone. Thank you, Spaceflight Now." Well, that's a lot of very kind words, Patty. Really appreciate that. Also want to thank Artemis for gifting another 550 channel memberships. Really appreciate that, Artemis. So now to the 100 members that Artemis has brought into the community, big hello, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Artemis in the live chat if you haven't already, and we hope you decide to stick around with our channel member community. And to our channel members, don't forget we also have our Discord that's available to join right now. Good place for comments and commentary of your own about happenings in the realm of spaceflight, and perhaps some thoughts on what we do here at Spaceflight Now, ways we can improve, ways to better interact with all of y'all. So be sure to pop over to the Discord app on your phone or on whatever laptop or desktop you prefer to use. Would love to see you there. Now currently T-minus 46 minutes, 13 seconds and counting. Just about 8 minutes away from the point at which the, or about 6 minutes, excuse me, from what the point at which the SpaceX launch director will make the call on the start of prop load here. Also want to thank Rick Donner for gifting another 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate you, Rick. Top of the 5 from earlier. So big welcome to our now 10 newest channel members. We're glad to have you with us. as we mentioned earlier, and as you can see from the fairly newly replaced American flag there blowing on the right-hand side of your screen, it's a somewhat blustery day here along Florida's Space Coast. Coming into this launch opportunity today, the 45th Weather Squadron's launch weather officers forecast conditions to be pretty good at the launch pad itself. Just a 10% chance of violating weather constraints, or in other words, about 90% odds of favorable weather at liftoff. Tracking the liftoff winds and cumulus clouds is the main two watch items here. Talking weather now, the 45th Weather Squadron forecast launch conditions to be about 90% favorable for liftoff today. The winds clocking between 18 to 24 miles per hour. Booster recovery weather, however, charting in the moderate level on the scale of low to moderate to high. Taking a look at some satellite imagery from GOES East, the clouds over Florida. Second, we'll should be getting the radar view, which is a little bit of a wider vantage point. There's a map of the wind direction. The Falcon 9 is going to be flying, since it's going to the 6th shell, in a southeasterly trajectory, with the drone ship, just to read the instructions, stationed offshore from the Bahamas. You can see a little bit of weather starting to develop in the area. Fortunately, nothing of a threat of becoming a tropical cyclone in the next few days, at least in the area of the drone ship. So that's certainly good news. However, if for whatever reason SpaceX is unable to launch today, the conditions in the booster recovery zone go from their current status of moderate, and they deteriorate and become listed as high on the low to moderate to high risk level. Taking a look at our own localized weather data from our local weather station here that we have at the press site. You can see here our avian friends are cawing out and about. Here are our microphones. Anyway, the steady state winds we're tracking are about 10 miles per hour, with the most recent gust at about 15 miles per hour. So at this stage of the game, still relatively calm from a launch perspective. That is the reason why you see our cameras bouncing a bit, just because it is still a bit breezy. The bird that you see there at the bottom of your screen may have been the audio culprit we heard just a moment ago. Of course, all of the pads here at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station and extending into the Kennedy Space Center, situated in and around the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge, and the wildlife portion of that certainly lives up to its name from time to time. If you ever take a bus tour out here, don't be surprised to see a lot of those. I believe those are sandhill cranes. Don't quote me on that. I am not a avian expert by any stretch of the imagination. But you may see some wild boars out here, certainly our share of crocodiles hanging out in the water, in the creeks. Alligators is what I meant to say, not crocodiles. Now currently T-minus 39 minutes, 9 seconds and counting. Just about a minute away from the point at which the SpaceX launch director should make the call on the start of Propelload today. We do have the Brevard County Emergency Operations Center, which activated about 20 to the top of the hour in preparation for this mission. Again, if SpaceX does give the nod to proceed, then fueling is set to begin now, a little less than 3.5 minutes. Now T-minus 36 minutes, 56 seconds and counting. Do have word from SpaceX within the last 30 seconds, and I'll quote, "Falcon 9 is ready, the weather's looking good, and propellant load is about to begin for today's launch of 23 Starlink satellites from Pad 40 in Florida." So with that confirmation from SpaceX, we now know that fueling set to begin. Good confirmation of that in just a little more than a minute from now. Again, if you weren't with us at the top of the broadcast, the fueling starts at T-minus 35 minutes with the loading of RP-1, or a rocket-grade kerosene, on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages, as well as liquid oxygen on board the Falcon 9's first stage. Taking a look at this punched-in view of the Falcon 9 rocket, it's actually a pretty clear day. Not too much heat distortion from this vantage point, which is nice. And the tree line actually, good job to Adam. Get a good view of the Falcon 9's landing legs at the base of the rocket there. What we'll start to see in the next few minutes as fueling begins and they're loading the super cold densified liquid oxygen. If you look at the Falcon 9 rocket, just to the right of that, you see the crew access tower and the horizontal crossbars along just above the tree line. If you go up 1, 2 above the top of the trees and then bring your eyes immediately to the left, You see that slightly almost white band near the base of the Falcon 9 rocket just beneath the X of SpaceX, which you can actually still make out, which is pretty nice. That's where we should start to see a little bit of a frost line begin to form as the oxygen starts to flow. And as the LOX begins to fill the tank, and the much colder temperatures of that hit the skin of the rocket and meet the much warmer Florida air, start to see a little vapor around the vehicle. Now T-minus 34 minutes, 27 seconds and counting. We're about 30 seconds into fueling at this point. So we should start to see some evidence of that in the next couple of minutes here. Taking a look at our live chat, want to welcome Jim Haggerty joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard, Jim. We're glad to have you with us. Also want to thank Lita for a $5 super chat. Good to see you this afternoon, Lita, who says the best place to share our love of space and launches, best folks anywhere. And I would certainly have to agree with that. Wolverine Warlord also with a $5 super chat. Another one of our wonderful channel members who says, well, it's a very kind comment. Since I am not listening to the commentary at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex, let those who would like read Wolverine's comment in full, but certainly appreciate the support there. I also want to thank Animo for a €2 super chat. Says don't have much but still want to support. Well, you know, Animo, really any support that folks feel like they are able to want to offer is most welcome. You know, large super chats, small super chats, it's really all helping to grow not just our community here on YouTube, but, you know, going through incremental steps of also improving our infrastructure here at the press site as well as around Florida's Space Coast so we can cover these missions to the best of our ability and bring you all good live coverage of the rocket launches, the preparation for such, and of course the on-the-ground reporting that we do at places like Starbase, when we went to go see the Dream Chaser space plane up in Ohio, the Glenn Research Center, heading out to the Jet Propulsion Lab in California and seeing the facilities from Rocket Lab down in Long Beach. So really channel membership is the biggest and most consistent way if folks want to lend their support to us. So if you get gifted a channel membership, if you like what you see here and you want to support what we're doing, go ahead and extending that. Great way to support what we do. The super chats are always lovely and a fun way to interact with y'all when we go live. But a free way that you can help us out, and it's just a quick and easy thing to do, is just by hitting the like button or sharing the stream with your friends and family. Now T-minus 31 minutes, 4 seconds and counting. You can start to see a little bit of that frost line that I was mentioning as the LOX is beginning to flow on board the Falcon 9's first stage. In about a minute or so, they'll also start loading cryogenic helium on board the first stage as well. Helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Helium will start to be loaded on board the Falcon 9's second stage as well in about 4-ish minutes. As we were getting ready to see this Falcon 9 rocket take off, let's go ahead and talk about where it's going to be heading. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? The wrong button there. Once the rocket leaves the pad at Space Launch Complex 40, it will fly in a southeasterly trajectory since this is a mission heading up to the 6th shell. Falcon 9 rocket will follow that green arc until stage separation, at which point the first stage will break off and land on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. They've got 2 here on the East Coast, and the one on deck tonight is called Just Read the Instructions. With a successful booster landing tonight, this will mark the 96th total successful landing for the drone ship Just Read the Instructions, and the 362nd booster landing for SpaceX to date. In addition to the booster, SpaceX will also endeavor to recover the payload fairings at the top of the rocket. They save about $6 million per recovery effort, so it's an important part of their business model to be able to do so whenever possible. As you can see in this picture from a SpaceX presentation earlier this year, they splashed down in the waters here in the Atlantic Ocean, in the case of today's launch, using parachutes. They're brought aboard a recovery vessel, brought back to Port Canaveral, then turned over to Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future flights, assuming no serious damage. SpaceX is in the process of certifying both its payload fairings as well as its boosters for up to 40 launches each. And speaking of reusability, take a look at this image from Blue Origin. Of course, this past week was also highlighted by the first stage of Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket rolling out to the hangar that you see here on your screen in this Blue Origin provided photo. That's over at Launch Complex 36 down in Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, a little bit south of Pad 40. Blue Origin also has plans to recover its first stage booster similarly to SpaceX using a marine asset. Their landing vessel is named Jacqueline, after the mother of Jeff Bezos, the founder of Blue Origin. First launch of this rocket is expected to be somewhere in the November timeframe. If all continues to track well, Blue Origin announced that they will have an integrated hot fire test where we will see all 7 of those BE-4 engines ignite as part of the full New Glenn stack. That's the next big milestone coming up. No announced date of when that's expected to happen, but we're trying to keep our eyes on Launch Complex 36 as much as we are able to at this point in time. But there again is where you can come in and help with your support. We're working to enhance our 24/7 live capabilities and get some camera eyes on Pad 36. So like with Pads 39A and 39B, excuse me, we can bring you 24/7 live views from LC-36 as the New Glenn program begins to ramp up. We're now T-minus 26 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. In less than 6 minutes, we'll start to see the so-called big vent as SpaceX prepares to chill down the feed lines prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. Talking booster history for just a moment, as we're now T-minus 25 minutes, 29 seconds and counting. This particular booster that is supporting today's mission, tail number 1085 in the SpaceX fleet. You can see in our live pictures there on the right-hand side of your screen, not a lot of soot on this rocket. It's fairly young for being part of the SpaceX fleet, flying for just its third time today. Previously supported the Starlink 10-5 mission, first flying on August 20th of this year, landing on the drone ship A Shortfall of Gravitas. Its next mission supported the duo, the launching duo, I should say, of the Crew 9 mission, heading up to the International Space Station, currently docked. Crew Dragon Freedom, actually just earlier this morning, happened to have a port relocation event where they moved from the forward-facing port, or the Earth-facing port, up to the space-facing or zenith port of the Harmony module to make room for the incoming Cargo Dragon spacecraft supporting the CRS-31 mission. That little hop and a skip from one port to another also marked the first time, I believe, that NASA astronauts Butch and Sunny would have flown aboard a Dragon spacecraft, having flown up to the International Space Station on the Starliner spacecraft. They will be a part of the returning Crew 9 mission once Crew Dragon Freedom is ready to undock, come back to Earth in the February timeframe. Now T-minus 21 minutes, 32 seconds and counting. Just about a minute away from the start of the so-called big vent. Taking a look at our live chat here for just a moment. Want to thank Daniel H. for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Really appreciate that, Daniel. To our newest channel member, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Daniel in the live chat if you haven't already. I also want to thank Sulfur for Lunch for a 100 SEK super chat. Lots of hearts of support. Thank you, Sulfur. Now T-minus 20 minutes, 48 seconds and counting. The chill down process has begun, and again, we'll see that visually with the big vent in about 20 seconds. I want to quickly thank James Castile for a $10 super chat. Thank you, James. He says, enjoy your coverage and commentary. That's very kind of you. And thanks to Astro Joe, marking 28 months as one of our channel members and one of our fabulous moderators, who says, always appreciate the coverage, Spaceflight Now. Thanks, team. Thank you, Astro Joe, for all you do for Spaceflight Now. And As you can see, the big vent now underway. Now T-minus 16 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. You can see the so-called big vent has wrapped up, and SpaceX is now just about 10 seconds away from starting second stage LOX load. Things are proceeding well on the Falcon 9 countdown as the Starlink 6-77 mission now just 16 minutes away from lifting off. Talking about the payload on board today's Falcon flight, there are 23 Starlink satellites. This will mark the 72nd Starlink launch of 2024. For a little bit of comparison, SpaceX launched 63 Starlink missions in 2023. Each of these satellites clocks at about 1,760 pounds, or about 800 kilograms, With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon Hall thrusters for in-orbit maneuvers, as opposed to the previously used Krypton Hall thrusters. They are built in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle, and they'll be deployed at about 180 miles or about 291 kilometers in altitude at a 43-degree inclination. Earlier this year, the partnership of Black Sky and HEO brought us this on-orbit image of a Starlink V2 mini satellite. First one we've gotten in color of one of these satellites in its on-orbit configuration. So appreciate them for sharing this image with the broader public, giving us a better look at one of, well, not one of, the most prolific type of satellite that's currently orbiting the Earth. Now T-minus 14 minutes and counting. Taking a look at our live chat here, I want to thank the now more than 8,600 of you who are joining with us live today. If you haven't already, we'd certainly appreciate it if you could hit that like button for us while we're live. Allows more folks to join our live coverage currently in progress. Also want to thank a few folks for their support this afternoon. Thanks to Jim Haggerty, one of our channel members, joining us with a $5 super chat, who says, we're watching from the starboard side of the Celebrity Apex, one of the cruise ships that is just off the coast of Florida on our way to Fort Lauderdale. Well, since this Falcon 9 rocket is going to be basically heading not directly overhead, but pretty close to it, Jim, we'd love to see if you are able to get a photo or some video if you are, or broad ask for anybody who's watching, especially if you're in the central to South Florida area or in the Caribbean. Be sure to tag us on X. We'd love to see what you're able to capture from this launch. Also want to thank Patty Chichil for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Really appreciate that, Patty. Another one of our wonderful channel members. And speaking of wonderful channel members, Tobe Wobe with a $20 super chat. Really appreciate that. Who says, let's go. Thanks for the coverage and commentary, Spaceflight Now. Well, you're very welcome, and thank you for supporting what we do here, especially at that level. With the roughly 12 minutes that we have remaining prior to the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket, let's go ahead and talk about SpaceX's workhorse vehicle. The Falcon 9, which stands at 70 meters or 229 feet tall, has a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. The majority of that is made up by the Falcon 9's first stage. This particular booster, tail number 1085 in the SpaceX fleet, will be flying for just its third time here with this mission. Of SpaceX's currently operable boosters, the flight leader remains B-1067, which has 22 missions to its name. SpaceX was able to accomplish 23 flights with B-1061 and B-1062 before they were removed from service. Giving it its namesake, the Falcon 9 rocket at the base of the vehicle has 9 Merlin 1D engines, which burn a combination of rocket-grade kerosene, or RP-1, and liquid oxygen, or LOX, which produce 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are the black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Again, today they are using Just Read the Instructions. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. In the image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. And at the top of the interstage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to Falcon 9's second stage. That first stage, main engine cutoff. High pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Second stage engine nozzle is also safely housed inside the interstage adapter until that point of stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9, powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's mission, placing the 23 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. As goes the first stage, so goes the second stage, burning the same prop mix, LOX, and RP-1. Following satellite deployment, it will ignite for a third time for a deorbit burn, driving the upper stage back into the atmosphere, where it will burn up, helping to eliminate the risk of creating any unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the top of the rocket are the payload fairings. Fairings are made up of a carbon composite material and stand 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, and are 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. 2 fairing halves will be recovered a little further downrange from where the first stage lands on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. They gently splash down into the support of parachutes, and as previously mentioned, they will be brought back into port and then turned over for refurbishment following the mission. Now, T-minus 8 minutes, 12 seconds and counting. We're just about a minute away from the engine chill down sequence on this Falcon 9 rocket. We're now currently T-minus 5 minutes, 48 seconds and counting. Just about a minute or so away from the point at which the Strongback retract sequence will begin here. Appreciate the $5 super chat from A. Bonino, which got me thinking and wanting to look up a little background on the whole daylight savings time thing. Abe says in his super chat that farmers appreciate daylight savings time, but we represent less than 2% of the population. For a quick history lesson courtesy of the U.S. Navy and their information center, there was a standard time established by the United States and Canada by the railroads, actually going back to 1883, but it became part of U.S. law first through the Standard Time Act on March 19th of 1918. And there was a bit of back and forth with it coming and going, which I won't bore you here since this is, in fact, not the History Channel and not all about daylight savings time. So let's go ahead and turn it back to this Falcon 9 rocket. But if you want to go look at the full history, they've got some information on the Navy's website. Go under the information center section. There's a little tab for daylight saving time. Now T-minus 4 minutes, 11 seconds and counting. Nice view of the Falcon 9 rocket there. You see those payload bearings, and just underneath the clamp arms from the Strongback of the transporter erector now opening up. That support system will recline away from the vehicle about 1.5 degrees away. Just a point of note, while the additional hisses they're hearing is coming from the mics at the pad, for whatever reason, SpaceX does not appear to be piping in mission audio. So that's the reason why we've not been hearing the callouts from SpaceX at this point as we normally have. Now T-minus 2 minutes, 45 seconds and counting. At this point, assuming all is remaining on track, SpaceX will have concluded first stage liquid oxygen load and are preparing to wrap up second stage.
Launch on countdown 1. Hold, hold, hold. Standing down for helium stage 1.
And that may have been the reason why we didn't hear anything, is because they were working through a helium issue, which is forced to hold, and because SpaceX operates under a load and go type of fueling process, they are not able to recycle once the fueling has begun. So a hold means a scrub in today's case. Again, if you're just joining us expecting to see SpaceX encountered a helium issue on the Falcon 9's first stage called a hold, which again, because SpaceX uses a load and go style of fueling, means they do not unfortunately have the ability to recycle the countdown, as is the case with some other rockets, and go for another launch attempt, which means they are pivoting to likely sometime after the cargo Dragon mission on Pad 39A. SpaceX and NASA have a roughly 24-hour agreement between missions. If NASA has a mission on the pad planned for a specific time, the agreement is, broadly speaking, that SpaceX will not launch another Falcon 9 rocket, especially on the same coast, within 24 hours of the NASA operation. Reason for that being, while the Starlink missions are obviously not NASA flight, SpaceX or NASA does learn from the SpaceX missions, and so if there were to be potentially an anomaly on a Falcon 9 rocket in the, let's say, couple hours before a NASA mission, NASA would want more than just a couple of hours to process the data and make sure that there would potentially be something similarly of note on their Falcon 9 rocket supporting the NASA mission. So again, all that being said, the Starlink 6-77 mission will not be moving forward today, unfortunately. We will, of course, be back with you for the next time that this mission is ready to go, but of course, looking over at Pad 39A, if we can go ahead and bring that shot up, Stephen. Thank you. We do have the Falcon 9 still horizontal there at LC-39A, getting ready to be brought upright in preparation for the planned launch of the CRS, or Commercial Resupply Services 31 mission. That being said, since this was a first stage helium issue on the Falcon 9, unfortunately we don't have a lot much more information beyond that. So, without going into overly speculative territory, of course NASA will be, I'm sure it has been, in communication with SpaceX in the days leading up to the planned launch of CRS-31 set for tomorrow evening. We'll see if this helium issue has any bearing on the Falcon 9 rocket that's set to launch the CRS-31 mission. And while we don't have a launch today, we can leave you with a pretty spectacular image courtesy of the Florida Space Coast, a nice rainbow arcing over Pad 40 there at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. And boy, would it not have been spectacular to have seen this rocket launch through a rainbow. We probably could have gotten some really cool imagery. Or Adam Bernstein could have gotten a stellar photo as it was arcing through that rainbow. Alas, it was not meant to be for today, so we will keep you apprised of, again, when SpaceX is planning to target the next launch opportunity for CRS, or excuse me, of the Starlink 6-77 mission, as well as, again, if there are any impacts to CRS-31. If this issue is fairly easy to understand, if there was just a sensor or, you know, something that does not impact the CRS-31 mission, then that will proceed with a launch tomorrow evening. NASA and SpaceX are targeting a liftoff from Pad 39A of that Falcon 9 rocket, if, again, all remains on course. That rocket set to lift off at 9:29 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's coming up on Monday night. one more point of note as far as the timing of all of this. The Falcon 9 rocket supporting CRS-31 was originally supposed to go upright at the pad yesterday, so running a day behind on that. And as we take one last look at this launch pad over here, Launch Complex 39A, the rocket's still horizontal at the pad, the cherry picker no longer up near the Dragon spacecraft. But if you'd like to continue tracking the progress of this Falcon 9 rocket, you can head on over to Launchpad Live, our 24-hour live pad viewing channel here on our YouTube channel. Live stream on our YouTube channel, I think is a better way to phrase that. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up for today. A quick thank you to Stephen Bybee for a $2 super chat. Thank you, Stephen. To Frank Skurlock for a $2 super chat as well. He says, thank you for your commitment to bringing us each launch. You're very welcome, Frank. Thank you for your support of what we do here at Spaceflight Now. And I'll give our last word from the live chat to one of our wonderful channel members, Mitchell Wilbur, with a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you, Mitchell. He says, still appreciate all you guys working. And you know, if they're going to make a launch attempt, you know that we will certainly be out here giving it the old college try from our end of things. I'll note SpaceX just issuing a statement on X, formerly Twitter, saying, as we've been talking about, that they're standing down from today's launch, but note that the vehicle and payload are healthy. So hopefully whatever helium issue caused the scrub today will not be a deterrent from them launching the CRS-31 mission tomorrow. All that said, thanks to our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images and Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions for being right at the ready to help support our coverage and be ready to track the rocket, had it launched today. Our thanks as well to our photographer Adam Bernstein for all the hard work of the camera setup and being ready to hopefully have gotten that Falcon 9 as it arced through the rainbow, which again is just terribly disappointing that couldn't bring that to you today, but it is what it is. You can follow our photography team on X. Adam is at ABurnNYC, Michael Kane at MT Kane Jr. And while you're there, follow Spaceflight Now at Spaceflight Now. You can also find us on Threads and Facebook as well. Thanks to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young. A big thanks to our wonderful moderators in the live chat, Astro Joe, Callistia Lee. And thanks as always to our wonderful channel member community. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. For those living in the United States, don't forget, if you haven't voted early, Election Day is on Tuesday. And while this is not a politics channel and this is not a plug for any party, just broadly speaking, we encourage you all to exercise your right to vote. If you haven't already, Election Day is coming up on Tuesday. So we wish you all happy voting. For the team here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.